Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beyonce Knows, the conversational podcast covering all things unimportant, where dark humour is encouraged and no topic is off limits. From the sublime to the ridiculous, we've got you covered. Let us know where you're listening from using the hashtag BeyonceKnows, or follow me on Instagram. Please follow me on Instagram at BeyonceUK. Let's get going. This is the podcast. This is Beyonce Knows. Today's guest has been in my life for pretty much all of it. He's a unicycling, motorcycling, morph suit wearing, positive thinking, limerick writing enthusiast, a dedicated community man. He's often found helping others for no reward. He used to race motorbikes in bright pink leathers, and he's credited with raising one of the finest podcast hosting visionaries of the modern era. He's also my dad. Welcome, Doug Harris.
Why, thank you, John. That's very nice of you to create such a long list about an ordinary guy.
I'm sure it'll be extraordinary by the time we've finished Beyonce Knows episode, whatever it may be. As you know, we'll start with the Quickie Picky feature, but first things first, what are you drinking?
It's green tea this morning.
Thrilling.
That sounds healthy, doesn't it?
Sounds healthy. There's caffeine in green tea, though, I believe.
I believe there is.
You don't drink, do you?
I don't. I've been teetotal all of my life.
Why?
I'm probably the world's only teetotal Scotsman. Why? Well, genetically, it'll be no surprise that I've always wanted to be a little bit different. So whatever the herd does, I do pretty much the opposite. I've never worn jeans in my life. I mean, I have tasted alcohol when I was younger, but I've certainly never been tipsy or drunk.
Have you tasted jeans?
I haven't tasted jeans. I haven't tasted jeans alcohol.
Fair enough. But there's no reason for it, just because everyone else does, you don't. Fair enough.
Yes.
The Quickie Picky feature, as you know, at the start of every podcast, a nonsensical set of questions to give the audience in absolutely no way an insight into your mind.
What do you mean, as I know? You're assuming I've bothered to listen to any of your podcasts?
As my father, I would hope so. It's friends and family at the moment until we break the glass ceiling. So if you're happy, we're going to dive into those. I believe it's 9 questions this week. So happy to go for it?
Go for it. The pressure's on, but I live life on the hoof.
So, question 1. Describe Formula One in one word.
Tedious.
Rain or wind?
Rain.
What is your least favourite vegetable?
Cauliflower.
What's the worst number?
It's not 13, because you used to wear that on the back of your hockey shirt. The worst number is 5,642, because it's quite difficult to remember.
Fair enough. Who would you like to cook dinner for, and what are you cooking?
My abilities are limited to one-pot cookery, so I'll have to think of someone who eats to live, not lives to eat. So it certainly wouldn't be anyone from MasterChef. It would be yourself just before a sporting event, so I can feed you full of good nutrition and calories.
Fair enough. That's not quite the controversial answer I was looking for, but that's fine. You can, if I'm on your mind, that's fair enough. Do you have a favourite quote?
No, I don't have a favourite one, but I do like them. My problem is once I've kind of discharged something from its immediate usefulness, I forget it. I don't retain things particularly well.
So what's a recent quote that's possibly stuck with you?
God, that's the trouble. They don't stick with me. I remember when you were younger, you used to stick them on the wall, as did I.
Adapt or perish, I remember, on the top of your computer.
Adapt or perish, that's a good one. What about going to the motorcycle racing? A good one always used to be, to finish first you must finish.
Good. Next question. What is Reiki?
Oh, it's like a hands-on healing technique.
No, it's hands-off healing.
Is it? Yes,
Reiki's one of those bullshit ones where you just go near them with your hands, and then it's like Hadouken. You claim to make them better with your hands above the person. Yes. You can send Reiki to someone who isn't here. So I could send Reiki to the Queen, I can send good vibes of Reiki to the Queen.
Oh, it's Bluetooth. It's a Bluetooth
it's
healing principle.
It's bullshit, is what it is.
I prefer the hands-on range of therapies.
Yes. Can you recite the address to a haggis?
Burns' address to the haggis. Fair for your honest sonsy face, great chieftain o' the puddin' race, abun the ma you tak your place, pinch, tripe or therm, wheeler you wordy o' a grace as lang's my arm, etc.
Mighty impressive. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, who's your favourite child?
Neither of my two. Well, I couldn't possibly choose between 4 options. But I think actually...
4 options?
Yeah, well, I have 2 grandchildren and 2 children.
Oh, grandchildren, they're distant. Come on.
Yes, but they're still effectively fit into the category of my child. I think I'd actually have to say wee Becky, the Irish lassie that does the adverts on Irish radio.
Fair enough.
Do look her up. They are screamingly humorous.
I'll just write down me. Who wants to do that? Thank you for that. That was quickie picky. I mentioned in your introduction that you're a limerick writing enthusiast. Obviously, I've known this. Is it true you're the holder of the world's biggest collection of limerick memorabilia, books, etc.?
There's possibly 2 factions that might argue with that, but I think probably by now my sadly no longer with us pal Arthur Deeks from California was the man who pretty much got me started on the limerick book collection about 15 years ago. And he had a huge collection, which I was fortunate enough to see once when we went across to San Francisco for my 50th birthday. That was pretty huge. It now rests with San Francisco Central Library, I believe it is. But I think mine has probably outgrown his by now. It must be well in excess of 2,000 books.
Wow.
And there is another collection. My other friend, Greg, in Poland, here, he lives in Warsaw. He also has a significant collection because, would you believe the Poles are pretty prolific in churning out limericks that none of us can read or understand. But he has quite a big collection as well. But I think mine is probably the world's biggest, and I intend, because the collecting never stops, I intend that it will be the largest collection. And
why limericks?
I don't know. This was a latent thing. I love the I call it the people's poetry. I love the simplicity of the limerick, although do not believe they are easy to write well, and they're actually extremely difficult to read well. They have a particular lilt, which I like, and I'm not a big fan of the reputation they have in terms of smut and filth, and there are many of those. But I think there's a skill in encapsulating something within 5 lines, within a very limited range of syllables, and I think there's a skill in bringing humour to that as we normally do. And would it surprise you that I've prepared one for you today?
It doesn't surprise me. Let's hear it.
Okay. I'm so honoured to do this podcast, considering its listeners amassed. My street cred will blossom as your fans. I shall toss 'em some banter and tales unsurpassed.
I believe that is the first prepared item on the Beyonce Knows podcast. The first Beyonce specific. We've got merchandise. I see you're wearing your Beyonce t-shirt today, but that's the first item. So we must have that typed and framed, if possible, and put on the wall of the podcast studio, which is as of yet to be built.
We could have possibly just created the first limerick ever on a podcast. I mean, it'd be interesting to know.
Yes, I'm not sure how verifiable that'll be.
We could search. We should spend some time later searching, but
maybe off the podcast. It won't be particularly enjoyable for the listeners.
And then on a podium in my Limerick Museum, which is a serious hope for the future, the Museum of Limerick Verse. The graphics are already done. We could place that first ever podcast limerick.
We could have it audio play. We could have it played out on as people go around with the headphones
On a loop.
on a loop.
Framed and mounted and also on a loop.
Where are you hoping this museum's going to be?
I don't really mind where it is. I'd like it to be in the UK, as I believe it's controversial because the town of Limerick will have you believe, and some of the authors in
the Republic of Ireland.
In the Republic of Ireland will have you believe that Limerick emanated from there, though the verse emanated from there. I think that's purely a desire of the people who are into tourism over there. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the early stages of the Limerick?
Dive into it.
It is. Please, if anyone listening has any details, you could uncover the mystery of Limerick verse, because nobody is actually sure why it's called a Limerick. One of the very earliest limericks, it's a slightly abbreviated version in terms of the syllable count, but hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock struck 1, the mouse ran down, hickory dickory dock. That is the earliest limerick in print that we can find. 1744 that was first published. But it wasn't until 1846 that Edward Lear produced his famous Book of Nonsense. And you asked me the question earlier, why limericks? I think my mum used to read me limericks. And when I was a kid, and there was this latent love of them. It's the lilt, the beat, the metre of the limerick which appeals because it has a staccato da-da-da-da-da-da-da sequence. And that somehow embedded itself in my psyche. But it wasn't really until about 20 years ago I kind of got back into limericks, and 15 years ago I started collecting. So we're talking 1744 when they were first seen. We're talking, I mean, there are earlier things, but not in print, definitely in pure limerick form. Shakespeare is reckoned to have produced something, but I think it was probably by accident. There's a little bit of the metre and a little bit of the 5-line AABBA rhyming structure.
Are you calling Shakespeare a thicko on the Beyonce Knows podcast?
No, I'm just calling Shakespeare aficionados selective in the glory that they attach to him for having done some wonderful work. Not that I appreciate it one little bit. To claim rights on the limerick as well is, I think, I think we're going to give the popularity of that to Edward Lear in 1846. But the actual word itself, if you look in the Oxford English Dictionary, was not attributed until the 1890s. But my fellow limerick anoraks, we've actually done some research, and we've now got the date back to 1879, where the word limerick in this context has been used in writing, so we can actually trace it in print. Funnily enough, limerick is then written with a capital L, which suggests there may have been some link across the Irish Sea. But so we're still hunting. So if you know, please tell me.
Do you think? Because all I can remember, I'm not a lover of verse particularly. I don't dislike it. I mean, I like songs that rhyme.
You have written limericks, I know, and they were excellent.
You would say that. You're my dad. I can only remember reading Aesop's Fables growing up. Is the only thing I can remember, particularly from my childhood. Do you, with the potential of a museum, would you worry it's perhaps a little bit niche, or are you not? Is it not a thing for the financial gain?
I don't think it's going to be commercial particularly, but you'd be surprised if you actually look around. Even on the popular social media platforms, there are limericks everywhere. Unfortunately, 85% of them are fairly poor. But
who's the worst limerick writer? Have you got any who do you hate?
That is a whole wing. I don't hate anybody. I'm not a hating kind of person. But I do actually have a whole wing dedicated to appalling limericks. And even worse than that, I have spent a significant amount of money on limerick books that don't contain a single limerick, because many authors don't even understand the definition of limerick verse.
So have you got beef in the limerick community?
Beef.
How do I describe that without sounding?
Do you mean a beef? I've got a beef with some of the Limerick community.
Okay, yeah. So have you had arguments? Are there communities and online? Are there forums with forearms?
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
the problem is, some people see it as their art, and if you are to suggest for a moment that their meter is not very good because it doesn't conform to the strict boundaries of the Limerick, they get very shirty very quickly, and I can understand that because
their brains are smaller than yours.
No, everyone likes their art. Everyone likes to have their art appreciated.
Well, it's the modern art challenge is who are you to say what's art and what's not? Maybe they've missed the syllabic qualities on purpose. What about haikus? What's a haiku? Do you have anything to do with them?
Haiku, I have written one or two, but I forget the rules of the Japanese derived type. No, I don't. They don't appeal to me. Haikus. I must before I forget. There is actually two things. You talk commercially there, and I wanted to say actually that the Limerick Museum will exist sometime in the future, even if the funding never arrives to build it physically. There will be an online Limerick Museum, so that's something to look forward to for everyone.
In the day and age of virtuals and all of that, I think that's...
And in fact, I do have some early funding. I have here a cheque for $50 from the Rural Oklahoma Museum of Poetry. And this was awarded to me recently for second place in their poetry contest.
You've hit the big time.
So I have hit the big time. The funding has begun.
Is that going to remain uncashed and be a feature in the Limerick Museum, I'd imagine?
I could frame it actually and not cash it. There's some other money I didn't spend actually. It's in the garage as we speak. We
won't tell people your address then.
I did win £3 once for a motorcycle racing success, and the individual pound coins are actually framed up with my trophies in the garage. So there's money in Doug,
I once framed the £1 deposit cheque I got back from my University Hall's accommodation.
I think possibly your mum and I should have that.
Yeah, quite possibly.
As a contribution towards the 40 grand we spent. One last thing on Limericks.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm hogging.
No, go down the rabbit hole.
I'm hogging the subject. No, when I was researching Limericks, as I have, I wasn't interested in history one little bit in my youth. But when I got into this, I suddenly became an amateur historian. Now, the first ever Limerick book, in terms of a Limerick book, a book that is solely Limericks, not just a book that contains a Limerick or a multiple number of Limericks, is it's about the 16 wonderful old women. And this book was published in London in 1820. I was lucky enough, at great expense, don't tell your mother, to get a copy of this book. And when it arrived, I was absolutely astounded to see that on the first page, the first inner page, it said, published by, wait for it, John Harris.
Well,
now,
you're welcome.
That is astounding to me. And I had no inkling. But, you start thinking, do I have a family relationship with...
Is it me?
This publisher in 1820? Are you older than I think you are? So I just thought that was a really nice touch. And in fact, since then, on your behalf, I have been collecting the books of John Harris because he was a major publisher. This was at a time where they were known as chapbooks, some of them, but printing was not available to the common man. Published books were actually only available to the rich and the landed gentry. But around the late 1700s, early 1800s, printing actually became available to the ordinary person, and books began to be printed on very, very cheap paper because they were churned out and they were thought of as disposable. So, of course, a lot of these, we're now talking, this is 200 years old, this book that I have, but of course hardly any have survived because of the poor paper they were printed on.
Is it the wrong time to announce that I've been down the office and changed my name by deed poll to Beyonce? Will that ruin things for you?
Perhaps we could search for books published by Beyonce. I'm sure there will be one. We have talked about the gathering of the greatest hits of the Beyoncé podcast in print.
There won't be many in attendance. It's funny, actually. Occasionally, if you Google people or maybe you do it through work often to find people's sort of professional profiles online, but if you ever Google yourself, apparently John Harris was credited with the invention of bacon. is a John Harris, which is something I'm also very proud of, because I had a bacon sandwich this morning.
Hamming it up again.
You said at the start, I asked you in the Quickie Picky, what's the worst number? What did you say?
I think it was 5,462.
Oh, it's amazing if you've got it right. I just wrote it down to bring it back up. Oh, it's amazing if you've got that right.
So you don't know either whether it's correct?
Oh no, I wasn't listening. I was concentrating on the sound quality. So you said about motorcycling. I believe on my 4th day of life, I was being held by my mother in one arm and she was timing you, clocking laps at I don't know which race course. But motorcycling was a big part and still is a big part of your life. But tell us a little bit about... I'm more interested in the mindset of racing in the bright pink leathers, because I pride myself now on having a incredibly vibrant wardrobe, and I wonder if most of that comes from you. But
I do feel responsible as someone who's also done many park runs in an array of morph suits, onesies, and other such things. But the motorbike racing, yeah, probably, I suppose, my greatest love, really, although Limericks are right up there.
Wife, children, grandchildren.
Yeah, those as well. Having been unable to decide upon a favourite, I could probably tell you my favourite motorcycle. Yeah, the pink leathers in the racing game.
Why pink?
Yeah, when I got into racing, originally leather was only available in black, and a lot of the history of motorcycle racing, going back to the early 1900s, everyone was clad in black. And even when I started, which would be 1979, on a Norton at Croft Circuit, if anyone didn't have black, they maybe had a little bit of a flash, which was red, white or blue. That was it. It would be, about 25 years ago, I suppose, when I got into it, maybe 30 years ago when I got into it seriously. But even then, there really was very little colour, and obviously it's very expensive. Obviously I wanted to attract sponsorship if possible. So I went down to the annual motorcycle show in London and looked up Manx Leathers and said to them at their stand, any chance you could make me some pink leathers? And they said, all right, where do you want these flashes? I said, no, I actually want them entirely pink.
Right.
And they had never done that before. So I hope to get noticed.
What a way to stand out. If everyone else is in black and you're in this salmon pink.
They did stand out. In fact, an interesting story. Not entirely a happy story, but my first race in them was at Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire on my RG500 Suzuki, which was a modified road-going version of what Barry Sheen used to race, the famous Barry Sheen. And I was racing on a very cold day with snow around in March at Cadwell Park, and of course, because I was on a brand new bike, which was also painted pink and in pink leathers, it was assumed that I was the rich daddy's boy who had arrived to take all the trophies away. And very strangely that day, I got booed.
Oh.
At the hairpin at Cadwell, where most of the... this was just a club meeting as a tester, not a particularly high level. But I actually got booed.
Oh, I'd love that.
And I won races that day. Right. And as I say, it was assumed that I'd come with the top kit and all the rest of it. I'd actually turned up with a trailer on the back of my company car. I was
going to say, have you seen my 2-berth caravan out back? It's got holes in the side.
Yeah, but it wasn't even a 2-berth caravan. It was, a tent.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, it was day 5 of your life when you were in a tent at Mallory Park.
Day 5, not day 4. Oh, well, I was matured by that point.
But I then, whether it was purposely or not, on that day, I got shunted into the grass, or off the track onto the grass, and obviously fell down because it was so wet and slippy.
Who by?
I can't remember. I don't know who it was. I didn't see him, but one does wonder whether it was on purpose that I got a little nudge to send me into the grass around the circuit. But yeah, so I didn't regret having pink. It did attract some sponsorship. It mostly attracted kids who came round because I became known as the Pink Panther.
Right.
I did have a panther logo on my back. I used to always keep a stock of sweets to give away to the kids. And
Yeah. Can't do that today.
probably not, unless they're supervised and they've signed a disclaimer.
All signed disclaimers to have a lollipop.
But yeah, it did get me noticed a little bit. And of course, when I moved up to national competition and on a single occasion, international competition, you know, it does get you noticed that you are in fact nowhere near the front.
Yeah. Oh, no, better to stand. It's always better to stand out. I think there are some people that often don't want to do things in case you stand out and it goes wrong. But it's all character building, isn't it? I'd rather stand out all the time, always try and stand out, because then when it does work, you look great. And if everyone else, if you're in pink leathers and everyone else is in black leathers, and that time you're on the top of the podium, magic. Could you hear the boos through the helmet? Yeah,
I could on that day. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's quite aggressive at Mallory Park.
This was Cadwell.
Sorry,
yeah.
Cadwell Park.
Cadwell.
Onlookers.
But
how dramatic.
But yes, we took you to Mallory Park when you were 5 days old, and we stayed in a tent. And later on, we took. Your sister was already there, but they were the best days of my life, I have to say. I could almost get quite emotional about it because, you know, you see people choose golf. I know you play golf and very well, and people take a lot of time out away from the family to go and play golf. It takes a lot of time to be good at it. The beauty of racing motorcycles was that, you know, we recount a famous occasion whereby we went to Pembrey, a circuit in southwest Wales. It literally took us, towing the caravan, 13 hours to get there. And you and Lorna, your sister, sat absolutely perfectly behaved in child seats for 13
what went wrong?
Hours. How things have changed. And we got all the way to Pembrey. But the beauty, you know, when we were there from Friday night until Sunday afternoon, and then it was 12 hours to come back. The beauty was we did it as a family, and it was fantastic. We were together for the entire duration, and the only time I wasn't with you was when I was nipping around the circuit. Yeah. So it was absolutely. I loved the sport, I loved the excitement, I loved the competitiveness, but I also remember it as my happiest days when you guys were young and the photos were together.
You broke enough bones. I remember you used to go away on trips and bring back a T-shirt saying, I've been away to Scotland on my motorbike and all I brought back was this lousy T-shirt. And I remember thinking, you should have printed that and a broken collarbone. Because I believe you crashed on my 5th day of life, didn't you? You crashed on my first ever race meet.
I don't know. I had so many. I can't remember.
I think if Mum is correct, I must mention that Mum used to sit in the back of the sidecar, on the side of the sidecar with you sometimes, and you should race them occasionally, did she? Is that right?
Mum has been on a sidecar with me. It was a practice day at Mallory Park. She's also been around Cadwell Park on, again, a practice day with my friend Rob Cruikshank, who was also a sidecar pilot. I love the sidecars as well, actually. They were fun days.
Yes.
Sidecar guys are pretty bonkers, yeah, but, well, that's a weird thing. I mean, what I was about to say was the sidecar guys are not just racers, they are engineers. And I like that combination of skills. What was I going to say? We were moving on to...
Talking about broken bones.
Broken bones, yeah, we're talking about...
I was going to say, on my 5th day of life, I believe it was a pelvis you broke and smashed into smithereens.
No, that wasn't your 5th day of life. That was Mallory Park. I broke my pelvis at Donington Park, and in fact, that was when I was doing my one and only attempt at international competition.
That went well.
That went well, but I did qualify. Even though I broke my pelvis, I did qualify. In that session, I had qualified to make the grid. So I'm quite pleased, if nothing else. The pinnacle of my career as a goalkeeper was when I played a pre-season friendly for Whitby Town.
Oh,
the pinnacle of my
heights.
Motorcycle racing career was when I qualified for international competition at Donington Park. Yeah, unfortunately, I came off at Redgate Corner, which is the first right-hander. I high-sided it. For the aficionados of motorcycle racing, will be where I kind of got sideways, controlled it, but it went too far the other way. I got spat into the air and landed on the rumble strip, pelvis first, and managed to break it.
They're the only crashes that look good on the telly, though, the high side.
Yeah, I like to get a bit of height when I can. But I got a bit of a reputation for crashing. The vast proportion of them, I walked away and I was out for the next session. Your sister has seen me crash at a track day up at Croft. It's part of the game. I actually enjoy the crashing, but I do like to walk away afterwards.
Well, if you listen to Myrtle's podcast, she is an absolute fan of people who, get your elbows and your knees dirty and stuff, and you don't know your limits until you've crashed because you haven't got to them. So I'm maybe not crashing as much as I remember you doing, but I think it's a good thing in some ways. It might be expensive, but you push yourself and you learn your limits, because if you always stay in the safe zone, then boring.
Should you explain for new listeners briefly who Myrtle is?
Myrtle is the star of last week's podcast and possibly the best episode yet, and maybe for a long time. Unless you obviously improve some of your content. But
I aspire to Myrtleisms.
She is a superstar, and definitely going to record another podcast in person when we're allowed.
Will you have me back when I'm 91?
We might, maybe for the 91st episode. She is an absolute superstar. If anyone hasn't listened to Myrtle's podcast, go back, episode, whatever number it was, Myrtle Simpson, A Life on Ice. I said at the start you're a positive thinking enthusiast. Again, lots of the things I've learned growing up is sort of...
You've grown up?
Growing up. If there's adversity, laugh it off. Don't get angry, get even. Those sort of things. There's another quote of yours that I remember from my childhood. Why are you so positive? What makes you so positive and internally enthusiastic about things?
What makes me? I think it's fundamentally inbred. I think that there is a Scottish thrift goes on, and I know some of your pals from Scotland will be chuckling. But I think the Scottish thrift actually makes you enthusiastic, because us Scottish people, we are not tight. Let me get that straight. We have a reputation, particularly south of the border where I came when I was 8 years old, for being tight. We are not. We are generous people.
Have you met Adam McKenzie?
I have met Adam McKenzie. What a lovely fella. An excellent artisan of the hockey skill. He's still playing, isn't he?
Yeah, but he went to Weston, which is a highly controversial thing.
Dear.
Yeah.
No, he should have stayed
bastard.
at Inverleith. We Scots, we hate to waste anything. And I think that links to being enthusiastic about stuff. So, why not be enthusiastic? Why do something badly? Be enthusiastic and do it well. Therefore, your effort is not wasted. Mm-hmm. I can't help being enthusiastic. My problem is I gather these hobbies and interests and I never drop them.
Yeah. Hence the Limerick collection.
Hence the Limerick collection. I mean, I was about to mention I've hurt myself just as much on a unicycle, or rather off a unicycle, than I have on a high-speed motorcycle. But yeah, there's another hobby which I still have to a lesser extent now. But I kind of gather things and I never drop them. Photography, I always wanted to. I love photography, and I encouraged somebody once to get into photography. Who was that? Oh, it was my son at university.
I've got Google. So what's the point?
Creativity. You're a very creative person.
Thank you.
I have a lesser creative gene, but
I would disagree. We're a live limerick on the John Samuel podcast.
So I don't know. I think it's inbred. I think it's natural. I think Scots people are perhaps extra creative and enthusiastic, and I'm very, very glad that gene has passed down to your good self.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's quite a natural time to go to the ad break on this episode of Beyonce Knows. We'll be back shortly with more from my dad, Doug Harris. When the pandemic hit, everybody was spending more time at home, and a lot of you bought a dog. But has anyone thought about the impact this could have on the animals? Launching this summer, counselling for animals affected by overcrowding and pandemic-related issues, or for short, the CFAA BOA PRI. This organisation will put paid to the neglect of animals' mental health. We're here for your animals, not for you. Except guinea pigs. They're annoying. You've heard of Mrs. Doubtfire. You've heard of Mary Poppins. Well, now it's time for you dear old anti-vax to take centre stage. And don't think you can hide behind your keyboards. Anti-vax has a very particular set of skills. Skills she has acquired over a very long career. Skills that make her a nightmare for people like you. If you get your vaccination now, that'll be the end of it. She will not look for you. She will not pursue you. But if you don't, she will look for you. She will find you. And she will vaccinate you. Welcome back to Beyonce Knows. I'm joined this week by the man that raised me, my father, Doug Harris. You having a good time?
I'd rather be reintroduced as Douglas John Harris.
Douglas John Harris, okay. Welcome back to the Beyonce Knows podcast with my father, Douglas John Harris, who's got a bit sassy in his moment of fame here. We often, well, ever since we changed the format, we're going into the Legend and Loser feature of the week after the ad break. So, do you want to give me yours or do you want to hear mine?
I'd rather hear yours first.
Well, my legend of the week, she was mentioned just before the ad break, is Myrtle Simpson, the 91-year-old Scottish explorer, fearless granny, one of the most inspiring people I've ever spoken to, and so lovely. She actually followed me up to ask if the podcast was okay, has invited me to her house in the Scottish wilderness when things are allowed, and we've had the most messages since the podcast started saying how inspired they've been by Myrtle's message and some of her stories. So my legend of the week is without a doubt Myrtle Simpson. My loser of the week, one of my least favourite sportsmen of all time, is Amir Khan. After yesterday, he was quoted saying he's had his vaccine, right, which will all be, thank goodness, we can all rest easy and sleep well tonight. Now we know Amir Khan's had his vaccine. But he's suffered the hardship of a 12-hour headache after his vaccine. He's urged people to have it, but he said, prepare yourself for up to 12 hours of headaches. And I just think it's so heroic of him, even though his wife looks like a papier-mâché doll and he's a terrible boxer. So all the best to Amir Khan, loser of the week. Let's hear yours.
How does that headache compare to a right uppercut?
Well, we can ask Saul Canelo Alvarez, who sparked him cold out.
Perhaps the only... You'd probably say he's so quick he dodges them all, but...
Well, he doesn't, because I've seen him knocked out many times, and he'll definitely lose to Kell Brook if they ever get that fight on.
I saw his current BBC programme...
Oh, Big in Bolton.
Trailed, and if I had to describe it in one word, it would be plastic.
Yes. Have you ever seen a picture of his house? Big in Bolton.
I have seen a picture of his house.
Not a plant pot in sight. It's the most concrete, tarmacked, sort of emotionless thing you've ever seen.
I'm afraid, my legend of the week is not one who indulges in bling and image whatsoever. And that is His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, who...
R.I.P.
Sadly has passed away at... I really wanted him to get 100. I mean, I would like to get 100 just because...
What, so he could get a letter from his wife?
I never thought of that. Yeah, or telegrams. I think actually they do still issue telegrams for that rare occurrence. And yeah, there are probably many listeners who don't know what a telegram is. Yeah. They were just before faxes.
The original podcast.
Telexes and Betamax technology. But yeah, I think you can actually still arrange a telegraph for any 100-year-old persons you know. So let's hope Myrtle gets one.
Oh, absolutely. Well, she's not far off, and she's still skiing left, right, and centre. So I'm sure she will. I've absolutely no doubt about it.
So you're going to ask me why Prince Philip is my...
I'm assuming you're going to tell me.
I felt as if you'd forgotten there, so I thought I'd chip in. You know.
You're so sassy. You've been on a podcast, Margaret. Let's have a look. 39 minutes and you're questioning the tactics of the interviewer.
I'm beginning to think I could actually do a better podcast than you. No.
Feisty one you are.
I couldn't. I really couldn't. Do you know, should I tell you, stories just come to me there. When I worked in Saudi Arabia with your lovely mum, we had 2 years over there. And when we were in Riyadh, an opportunity to...
Riyadh or rehab?
Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. It's a dry and dusty place. And I was probably there for about a year and a half in total. An opportunity came up on the local radio station for a sports presenter.
Right.
I thought, this is right up my street. Now, the quality of the media out there at that time, and we're going back best part of 30 years, was fairly poor. And I thought, I can do better. So I went along for whatever the radio equivalent of a screen test is.
Right.
And no, it was actually a TV screen test. Anyway, I took props. I'd pre-prepared something about a subject that I was interested in and knew about. Mm-hmm. And they did the screen test. Now, the guy who presented the news and various other programmes was actually an expat, a Brit.
Right.
And we always used to say, it's a bit amateur, this programme. Well, I had the screen test and I watched it back. I was as dry as dust. And I learned then that there is an art. You have to be so over the top on TV to just appear as normal.
What do you think I've done 31 years of training for?
The over-the-topness is finally paying off. Yeah. Well, believe me, if you go on to fame on the silver screen, you will have to be even more over the top. And I find that sad. Yeah. And unfortunately, we see so much of this on TV these days. But over-the-topness, well, some people would say the Duke of Edinburgh had his over-the-top moments, his famous gaffes. But I think they will go down in history. Colemanisms, David Coleman, the famous sports presenter, used to have his gaffes. In fact, they were put into print. The Duke of Edinburgh has his famous gaffes, but I don't think any of them were done with malice. No. They were just, he had a propensity for off-the-cuff entertainment. He liked to entertain. He liked to put people at ease. He liked to have banter with people. And that's what he did, and he did it very well. And now it's all coming out. I mean, there's been a lot of fawning towards him from the media, which is surprising because they also hammer the royal family. I'm not a great royalist, but I do admire.
Well, the media loves people when they're dead, though. They hate people when they're alive. It's the same with everybody. Yeah. Jade Goody, hatred. Dead, she's a legend.
Yeah, build them up, knock them down while they're alive, and then fawn over them, and finally they perhaps put them into their grave. But no, I think he was a decent guy. I think he called a spade, and for that reason, particularly because he's the antidote to the woke pressure that we're all under these days.
We'll come on to that,
oh dear, we will. Well, that actually links into my loser of the week, who I have selected someone who otherwise, not that I was particularly aware of him, but otherwise I would have admired him. And that's Hank Azaria.
No idea.
Come on, you know who Hank Azaria is. You must watch the credits on The Simpsons.
I'm not... now you said it, maybe I think I recognise the name, but no. Enlighten me.
He voiced the character of Apu.
Okay.
The Pakistani store.
Thank you, come again.
Yes.
I'll probably be in trouble for that.
Do that again. That was...
No, I've done it once. The woke brigade that listened to this.
Thank you. Come again.
That was Doug Harris, both of them, with his impression of Apu.
No, you're actually very good at accents. I'm reasonable, but not quite so good. I can do Tommy Cooper if ever you wanted me to come back and do Tommy Cooper.
Tell us why Hank Azaria first.
Hank Azaria, yes, well remembered. Yes, he voices Apu on The Simpsons, and he has come out, if that's the right expression, this week and apologised for having done so. This is at a point probably at least a decade after he's made millions from doing this.
Yeah.
He's come out and apologised.
Is he giving back the money?
That is open to question at the moment. Right. I believe probably not. Just the same as Lewis Hamilton hasn't given back his money to his employers of the past with dodgy pasts. However, that's another controversial subject. Hank Azaria, yes, has come out and said that he apologises for, as a white person, voicing the role of a black person. And I thought, that's pretty ridiculous, because in doing so, he's suggesting that a black actor should not voice the role of a white person, which seems ridiculous to me. They are, by definition, acting.
Yeah.
They're not pretending to be anyone. They're reading a script, and I don't see any reason why he should have come out and said that.
It's the same as who's the guy that played Manuel in Fawlty Towers? Because they've all been cancelled, haven't they, in the cancel culture? Who played...
Fawlty Towers was rerun the other night on BBC, so
oh, wow.
They have...
It's been cancelled off Netflix.
Reconsidered.
Who played Manuel? What was his name? Did he die?
Andrew Sachs.
Did he die? Or is he's being cancelled by the media? Anyway, it's the cancellation culture that one of my favourite ever comedies, actually, was called Come Fly With Me. David Walliams, and I'm not sure if Matt Lucas was in it. Anyway, oh yeah, I think he was, yeah. The two of them. It was called, have you ever seen it?
It doesn't ring a bell.
It was at BBC. It was almost, not a cult following, but it was much smaller than Little Britain and whatnot. But that was on BBC, and Come Fly With Me then made it onto Netflix. And I think it was one or two series, maybe just one series. I used to watch it once a year, all 8 episodes or whatever. And it was comedy based on... there's a guy, Terry Foote, was the... it was based in an airport, and there was all the different... Do you remember the airport, the old programme?
Yes.
It was based taking the mick out of that, and it was all different. You had a flight attendant as one person, you had a check-in desk clerk as another, you had somebody who deals with first-class clients, you have the guy at the works at the... what's the word when people come into the country? And you check their... Not interrogation. Immigration, sorry. Or interrogation, quite. And Terry Foote...
Have you had your jab?
Yeah. Terry Foote, played by David Walliams. He interviewed an actress who... Sorry. Yeah, an actress who was of Asian descent. And he was pretending that she was a terrorist. And he said, well, quite clearly this is a false passport because you're claiming to be from a place called Liberia. So he was taking the mick out of her passport because he said Liberia is obviously a made-up country. Now, everyone's offended by it and it's been cancelled.
That's Liberiaist.
But the joke is about his lack of intelligence for not knowing that Liberia is a country, not because she's from where she is. Yeah. So, but people are offended, so it got cancelled because of that, because it's racist. But actually the joke is about Terry Foote, the white British man with a real questionable moustache, having poor geographical awareness that Liberia is a place. But people see red and they think, cancel it, it's offensive. But it's not.
You're obviously passionate about this.
It annoys me because, I mean, one of my favourite comedians is Ricky Gervais, because he says the woke brigade, he loves it. He's saying that because they're playing all of their cards. And he says the brave amongst us who are willing to still take the piss out of things, he said they're writing the material for him. He said he's got 10 years of material written, none of it by him. He said the woke brigade are writing his material because they're playing their cards, getting offended by everything, identifying as dinosaurs and whatever other people identify as these days. And they're playing their cards, and he loves it. The problem is too many people are nervous, too many people get cancelled, and the cancel culture, and people run away scared and can't say anything, and brands stop working with people. Justin Thomas, the golfer. Do you know the story about him?
I don't.
He played a shot in a tournament. There's obviously a million microphones that follow these golfers around. Played a shot in a tournament, and under his breath just went... He duffed the shot, and he went, oh, faggot. Right? Under his breath. He didn't shout it. He didn't say, I hate them. He didn't say, this is a word that I love to describe people of a certain sexual choice. He just said it under his breath. And loads of the brands associated with him have said, no, we're going to cancel our sponsorship deals with you. He obviously came out and said the right things and said, I'm going to go on a course. I need to seek awareness. I'm really sorry for my actions. Now, he's sorry, and that's fine. And he shouldn't have said it. But he's admitted that he shouldn't have said it. It's not gross misconduct. If people got fired and cancelled for doing that, nobody would have a job. So he's been cancelled, And he said sorry, and he meant it. And he shouldn't have said it, but he's admitted it, and he said it under his breath. He didn't scream it in someone's face. He just said a word that probably shouldn't be in the vocabulary, and it shouldn't be, and it's a horrible word. But I don't think he deserved to lose his £1 million sponsorship from Ralph Lauren.
It's a word that also has other meanings, and
well, yeah.
For me, cancel culture is so negative. Cancel is has a negative connotation. Those who are offended spend their entire time working out what others cannot do or cannot say.
Yeah.
There's no offering of alternatives. There's zero positivity in it all.
Yeah.
And it serves, particularly when it comes to issues of racism, it serves only to highlight the differences. Mm-hmm. I discussed this the other day with your mum. We were watching sport on TV. There was Denise Lewis, a fantastic athlete, a beautiful woman, if I'm allowed to say that anymore. And for the first time, I realised that I was looking at her as a black woman. Previously to that, I would have looked upon her as an attractive ex-Olympic champion.
The attractive's in there again.
It's true. Well,
yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it's true.
Yeah.
And I find that very sad because it has taken me, the pressure from the woke brigade has taken me a step backwards instead of a step forwards.
Yeah.
And I have even written to people recently. I do a lot of letter writing. I know it's old-fashioned these days. But
a strongly worded letter.
Yes, I do write a strongly worded letter, sometimes to the newspapers, sometimes to my MP, sometimes to ministers of the government. These are all things I have done this week. And, seldom you get meaningful responses. But I have challenged various authorities to define the word black in terms of race.
Right.
Because I'm genuinely interested to know, and I think it would be helpful to know, what is the definition of black in racism terms? Because we have, for example, I saw a lady the other night, I think it was the parent of the person that has been shot in the car in America, whereby the police officer thought they were using a taser. And that lady appeared to me, and you've got to be really careful these days, unfortunately, what you say, even if you are well-meaning. She appeared to me to not be a black person. Mm. So what I'm having to juggle in my head right now is what generation, how many distant generations did she have, if we can say, pure black blood in her? How many generations down the line can you still call yourself black? Lewis Hamilton calls himself black. He has a white parent. President Obama was heralded as the first black president, but he has a white parent. So, so we call people black when they have one white parent. How many generations do we go down the line and they still, some people like to claim, I fear, blackness. But there is no definition for whether or not they can do so. Yeah. Because nobody will dare, even the authorities will not dare to give us a definition of what is black because they're not brave enough to come out and say so because they don't feel as if they are authorised to do so, and they're concerned about the backlash. So the whole thing has become so entangled that nobody dare make progress, and all of the progress that we are making now is actually retrospect. It's retrograde. Yeah. Well, that is very sad.
I said on a podcast I recorded with a friend of mine, Hannah, the other week, that I haven't published actually yet, that true equality is actually not referring to anything. If you have we discussed, if you have Arsenal, and Arsenal actually have done this, but if you have Manchester United Football Club and then Manchester United Women's Football Club, that's not equality. You should either have Man United Men's and Man United Women's, or Man United and Man United. You don't have... And I listened to a real inspirational talk with a woman whose name I believe is Sabine, who has a run club called Black Trail Runners. And her whole goal is to not have to have the Black Trail Runners. But she does, because they have suffered racial discrimination, and it's very, very real. But she doesn't want to have this club. She wants it to get to a point where there's just trail runners. The problem is there's two types of people. There's people that actually suffer racist abuse who absolutely deserve equality and deserve help and deserve the support that they need. And then you have the offended people who often aren't even the ones suffering racist abuse or sexist abuse or whatever they might be suffering, but they just say things about it. They're offended by things. More often than not, it's privileged white people saying these things. They don't need to say that. The people, what should happen is, in my mind anyway, the people that are suffering offence should be looked after, and everyone should be given equal opportunities, and that's it.
Yeah,
in my mind, there should be no lines, no grey areas, no. I'm allowed to say grey areas.
There should be one category only, and it's a person.
Yeah,
and that covers everything.
Yeah,
but we're going the opposite way. What should be respected in the world is your contribution in terms of, your helpfulness, your kindness, your niceness, your creativity, those sorts of contributions. But unfortunately, many people seek to subdivide to such a degree, that we now have LGBTQIA+, and on it goes to, I heard the other day, 100 categorisations of gender.
I was 82 a couple of weeks ago.
82, I think it's gone to 100 now. It's crazy because, okay, people may identify in those categories, but let's be honest, sexuality is only a fraction of our lives.
Yeah.
Therefore, it needn't be...
Speak for yourself.
It needn't be the handle. I know it's not a strong suit for you. We need we don't need a handle that simply embraces your sexuality, because it's a fraction of your life. If we subdivide sexuality, as an example, down into 100 categories, then yes, we are bound to offend people in that context more often, because we have subdivided it. If we go to the other extreme and we simply describe everybody as a person without any other descriptive category, then we can't offend anybody.
But what about people who don't identify as people?
I'm defeated.
Love him or hate him, everyone kicked off when Piers Morgan identified as a pansexual two-spirit penguin to a person on TV.
Okay.
And he said, "No, you're not." He was, "Well, no, I am in this moment changing my identity." He was obviously being cynical.
I've got it. So now we need persons, non-persons, and people who identify otherwise but must pre-declare it to all and sundry to allow egalitarian comment.
Okay. Rolls off the tongue.
We've cracked it. We have actually defined the future of equality.
It did remind me of this sort of the world we live in at the moment, of a news article I read yesterday about elitism, and we discussed this last night actually. There is a university, and I still can't find the name of it, they're obviously unnamed for a reason, who are encouraging lecturers not to mark down or even point out bad grammar, spelling and or punctuation, because it's now seen as elitist. So basically, if you can't spell something wrong, you're not going to be told it's wrong. It doesn't make you a thicko, it just means you made a mistake, and the lecturer no longer has the right to correct you because it's elitist. So in that sense, you can just make mistakes and be correct. So if you're wrong, you are right.
Uh-huh. I'm very surprised that one of your staff was not Googling this as we speak, so you could actually record who the...
I don't have any subordinates. I'm a solo podcaster.
I've come into these palatial premises with all this equipment, and it's only you. I'm astounded.
I want 100% of the proceeds of this.
The royalties are all yours.
Yeah, I'm not interested in sharing that stuff out. But it just got ridiculous, and I don't want to go too deep in it as we draw to a close, but you are right. People are people, and just like... It gets that thing, I'm not sexist, but I'm not racist, but... No, just don't be. Just be a nice person, be sound, be friendly. If you don't like someone, don't hang out with them. Yeah.
The trouble is all of these pontifications by, I'm sad to say it, but left-wing universities, etc., they are so easily, they shoot themselves in the foot because their argument is so easily defeated. Straight away, if they think that correct punctuation and grammar is elitism, well, surely enticing people to pay, which in turn pays their wages, to go on courses to obtain for themselves good jobs, surely that is elitism when compared to the people who are not prepared to go to university or can't afford to go to university. So immediately their argument can be destroyed.
So to flip it all then, and get back to some, hopefully some slightly more light-hearted things as we draw to a close. You do a lot of community stuff, helping people, raising money for charity, whatever it may be. What the story I want to hear is about 1DA, a man I've met various times, but one of the most wonderful stories. I'd like people to hear the story of 1DA. So give us the headlines of 1DA, the Paralympic medalist.
You mean we're not going to have time to talk about unicycles and juggling and things like that?
No, because I want to keep some listeners.
I know, but I was about to say earlier, I think you spent too much time talking here. It's supposed to be an interview, not a platform.
This is the sassiest podcast.
For angst.
Myrtle has a film about her life and she didn't question me.
She's obviously a far nicer person than me. Right, 1DA Fikre Indelbu is one of my heroes. And of course, having been called a white supremacist by someone on a Facebook forum about open water swimming, I tried to explain to him that I met this guy at a park run in Middlesbrough one day, and he seemed lost. So I said to him, and his English was very, very poor indeed, I said to him, did he want to come for a cup of tea? And he said yes. So we welcomed him into the group, and he had enough English to kind of explain who he was.
Right.
But over the months, we found that at the age of 12 in Ethiopia, he was with his father in some kind of accommodation. I'm not sure what kind of accommodation it was, probably a ramshackle building. And in through the door came a grenade, which exploded and killed his father.
Right.
In that attack, 1DA also lost one of his eyes and the vast proportion of one of his arms. Mm-hmm. Shortly after we met him, this was in 2012, which that date will probably be flagged up in many minds as in many minds as
it can be daunting coming on a podcast of such stature,
especially when you don't get much chance to talk. This was Olympic year, the London Olympics 2012.
Right.
Now, 1DA managed to become their representative. He was always keen on running, and he got to such a level that he was able to be the Ethiopian Olympic representative for the Paralympic 1500 metres, and he won the silver medal. A lot of Ethiopian life is politicised, and to a greater extreme, the elite sport in Ethiopia is full of politicisation. And he had a big bust-up with one of his coaches and decided that he would do a runner. See what I did there?
Pardon the pun.
And he ran away when he was in London. And eventually, I think he was picked up by the authorities in Wakefield, and he became an asylum seeker. He was then transferred up to Middlesbrough. I met him. We took him into the park run fold. We could talk all day about
which I'd imagine he was winning regularly.
He hadn't started running it at that stage. He was just kind of sussing it out because he was then looking for running opportunities.
Right.
I mean, he's gone on to run in the Great North Run and various other 10Ks.
He's a serious athlete.
And he's a serious athlete, despite his lack of sort of intrinsic balance, because I once saw him lose a regional race because he couldn't see that on his blind side, literally on his blind side, another athlete was coming up and pipped him on the line. So when you have one arm, you lack balance. When you have one eye, you lack vision. And but he still won a lot of able-bodied races at 5K, 10K, half marathon, etc.
Top man.
So a great athlete, and he's a lovely man. I remember being with him one day, I took him. I could never persuade him, even though his total income was £35 a week as an asylum seeker. I could never persuade him to take money from me. Occasionally, he would take some food.
Yeah.
So we had gone to this Tesco to buy some food for him. On the way out, there was a guy begging. I'm getting quite emotional again, actually. There was a guy begging outside.
Okay.
And
take your time.
one day offered him money. So
He's a good egg. Take your time.
You know, we see a guy who's had his arm and his eye blown out. He's come as an asylum seeker to this country, and he offers somebody else some money. You know, that is truly humble.
He once tried to give me 20 quid for a bag of crisps.
And one day, he says something which I think we should all live by, and it's a very simple maxim. He says, I have enough, and we should all consider that as a way to live life. If you have enough, then it's okay, and share the rest.
What I did want to dive into a little bit is, that's the story of Wandier, but how you helped him, and because I'm very aware that you helped him with his application. He's no longer asylum seeker, am I right?
No, it was successful. He now lives in Leeds.
As a citizen?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yes, he's a British citizen, and he does a lot of community work. He volunteers a lot. He still runs. He's still competitive, but of course, for the past year, we've
of course
had none of that. So I hope to see him at the top again. He's growing his distances as he gets older. You know, he's in his mid to late 30s
right.
now. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And I love him to bits. I don't speak to him as often as I should do. I hope after COVID relaxation that I can go and see him in Leeds.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's a lovely story to finish on, actually, and that's Wandier. How you pronounce his surname again, just so people can.
Wandier Indelbu.
Wandier Indelbu. Wondie, I believe.
Correct.
If you want to search him up, and if you're ever jealous of a 5k time, don't look at Wandier's because it'll be quicker than yours. A lovely story to finish off. Well, thank you for being a guest. Thank you as my father for joining the Beyonce Knows podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Even if you haven't spoken as much as you like.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed it more if you'd shut up a bit. And no, I've loved it.
Good.
I'll give you a hug in a minute once we get rid of all these wires. And I must say, I love you to bits, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you very much. That was Doug Harris, my father. Sorry, Douglas John Harris, as he reminded me earlier. My father, who joined the Beyonce Knows podcast this week. If you have any comments or thoughts on the podcast, get in touch at Beyonce UK on Instagram or using the hashtag Beyonce Knows. Get in touch. Let us know what you think. Keep smiling. And I have been reminded that I've forgotten one of the newest features. That's horrendous podcast planning and very unprofessional of me. I forgot the latest feature, which is Refer a Friend, where I ask whoever I'm interviewing this week to refer a friend. If that friend ends up coming on the podcast, I will donate £25 to charity. If that friend doesn't, and I'm dropping this on you now, I'm asking you to donate £25 to charity. So, who's your friend, why are you referring them, and what do you think the chances of them coming on the Beyonce Knows podcast are?
I'd like to refer Sharon Gator, who is not a well-known athlete, but she is an ultra runner in her mid-50s now, who holds various records for running the length of Ireland, for running Land's End to John O'Groats. I believe it's the male and female record. And she has done various other incredible feats. I'm sure Sharon will come on and talk about her incredible distance running over the years. I will pledge, whether she comes on or not, that 25 quid to endometriosis. can hardly say it, but I'll still
Endometriosis UK. Yeah, that's the one. That's fine. I shall tag them in this. Sorry, I forgot that feature. That's Sharon Gator. So hopefully she'll be coming on the podcast in the not too distant future. Thank you very much.